Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Labrynth deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck is one of the most powerful trap decks ever created. Especially now that we have Transaction Rollback, which just takes this deck to a whole new level, being able to copy our traps effects. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like getting your name screenshot in a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Lady Labrynth of the Silver Castle. This card is our main boss monster that you want to summon out as quickly as possible. That way you control a set card, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, and also it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects either. And if a Labrynth card or effect or a normal trap card effect is activated this turn except a copy of this card, then quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position, which is amazing to just get this card out on the field. And when a normal trap effect is activated, quick effect, you can actually set a normal trap with a different name directly from your deck to your side of the field, which is amazing because we have some really cool targets for this card to be able to set to your side of the field. We then play a single copy of Lovely Labrynth of the Silver Castle. This card is an amazing boss monster to be able to play in this build, but you really only need a single copy of this card because you always want to summon this card off of one of your welcome Labrynths. But this card is really good in the deck. You never want to see it in your opening hand, but it's really good in this build because your opponent cannot activate monster effects in response to the activation of your normal trap cards when this card is out on your side of the field. And it also has the ability you can target a normal trap card in your graveyard and set it back to your field, but it cannot be activated unless you control a fiend monster, which you will with this card out on the field. And if another monster leaves the field by a normal trap effect, except during the damage step, you can actually destroy one card in your opponent's hand at random or their side of the field, which is an insane ability that you can basically get rid of cards out of your opponent's hand and stop plays before they even happen. We then play a single copy of the Labrynth Butler. This card is great in the build if you're going second. I feel like this card is just really good in the build as a one-of though, as it has the ability that during the main phase, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard to be able to special summon a Labrynth monster or set a normal trap from your hand, which is an insane effect to be able to use this card to basically just set one of your trap cards to your side of the field, because the set normal trap can be activated this turn, which is great to be able to use. We then play 3 copies of the Green Labrynth Maid. This card is great in the build as a 3-up, and it's actually our main normal summon, because if this card is normal or special summon, you can add a Labrynth card from your deck to your hand, essentially being the Stratos of the deck. And if another monster leaves the field by a normal trap effect, you can draw a card, then you can apply the ability that from your hand either special summon a fiend monster or set a spell or trap. We also play a single copy of the Pink Maid. I feel like one copy of Pink Maid is all you really need, but I love this card as an extender in the deck, is it lets you send a normal trap card from your hand or that's set to your side of the field to grave to special summon a level 4 lower fiend monster from your deck in defense position, except another copy of this card. And if another monster leaves the field by a normal trap effect, except during the damage step, you can draw a card, then either special summon a fiend monster or set a normal trap card from your hand, which is a really cool ability. We then play 3 copies of Shanda Draglier. Shanda Draglier is definitely a 3-of in the build, especially with Transaction Rollback in this deck, because it has the ability that quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard, and then discard a card to set a Labrynth spell or trap from your hand or deck, which is a really cool ability to be able to use this card to instantly get your copy of Rollback from your hand in the graveyard, while also getting the exact card you need on your side of the field, like Big Welcome Labrynth or Welcome Labrynth, which is just really, really good. We then play 3 copies of Stovey Torby. Stovey Torby is just really good as a 3-of in the build because it's a level 2 monster. It's very easy to go into Chaos Angel with one of our level 8 monsters, but it also has a similar effect to your copy of Shanda Draglier, that quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard, discard a card to set a Labrynth spell or trap from your hand or deck to your side of the field, which is just really important to be able to get to our welcome Labrynth cards. But this card is amazing as a 3-of in the build because it is a level 2, so we can go into Chaos Angel. We then play 2 copies of Coup Clock. Coup Clock is really good because it really speeds the deck up, and I really like that about this card because it has the ability to quick effect discard this card, and then you can activate a normal trap card the turn it was set, which is a really cool ability, especially with a bunch of cards that we can use with this card's ability. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is a great 3-of in the build just to basically stop your opponent from touching the deck. We then play 3 copies of Nibiru. Nibiru is just really good in this build to basically just break your opponent's board. Plus, it's really easy in this deck to be able to out a Nibiru token. And this card is just really good this format. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get in to the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start with a single copy of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is really good just to make sure we don't get hand trapped while we're going in for all of our plays. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Pot of Extravagance is really good in this deck because everything that we need in our extra deck we play of multiples. So this card is just really good, especially in trap decks, to be able to draw 2 so we can get more traps into our hand so we can go into more plays. But this card is just amazing in this build because we don't need that many cards in our extra deck. Except for cards like Chaos Angel, we don't really need the extra deck. So this card is really good in the deck because it just lets us draw 2 cards. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get in to the traps. So for the traps, we're going to start with a single copy of Dora McCannon. Dora McCannon is definitely a 1-of in the build, as this card actually affects the player and not the monsters, which is an extremely important fact about this card, is it has the ability that you change as many monsters on the field as possible to face down defense position. Then, if either player controls a face-up monster, they must send all face-up monsters they control to the graveyard, basically being a massive Book of Eclipse, which is really cool. And I love that about this card, that it just basically flips all monsters face down. And if they don't go face down, they must, the player that controls them must send them to the graveyard, because this card does affect the player and not the monster, which is so cool. We then play a single copy of Terrors of the Overroot. Terrors of the Overroot is definitely a 1-of in the build, as it lets you target 1 card your opponent controls and 1 card in their graveyard and switch them, which is insane to be able to do, because you send the card on the field to the grave, and if you do, set the other card from the graveyard to your opponent's side of the field, which can really disrupt your opponent's plays. We then play a single copy of Ice Dragon's Prison. Ice Dragon's Prison is so cool as a tech card in this build, as it actually lets you bring a monster back from your opponent's graveyard to your side of the field, but negate its ability. Then you can banish a monster from both players' fields that have the same type as each other, which is a really cool ability because you can banish the card, or you can just keep the monster on your side of the field, which is an insane effect to be able to use. We then play a single copy of The Black Goat Laughs. The Black Goat Laughs is one of my favorite cards in this entire deck because it's such a powerful card to be able to use, as it has the ability that you declare a monster card's name, and this turn, neither player can special summon monsters with that original name except from the graveyard. So if you know exactly what you're playing against, you can call the exact card that you know is going to stop your opponent in their tracks, which is so cool about this card. This card can be more impactful than D-Barrier because your opponent's not even going to get to summon out the monster to go into combos, which is why I chose to play this card in the build. It also has a graveyard effect, as you can banish this card from the graveyard and then declare a monster card's name, and this turn, neither player can activate the effects of monsters on the field with that original name, which is crazy powerful because this card is such a good card in the build to basically just stop your opponent in their tracks. We then play 2 copies of Welcome Labrynth. Welcome Labrynth is really good in this deck as a 2-of. It lets you special summon a Labrynth monster from the deck, but it locks you into Fiend monsters, which is not that big of a deal because it's pretty much all we're summoning anyways. And it also has the ability, if a monster leaves the field by a normal trap effect while this card's in the grave, except the turn this card was sent to the grave, you get to set this card back to your side of the field, which is a great ability. Just to constantly be getting this card back and constantly be special summoning Labrynth monsters. We then play 3 copies of Big Welcome Labrynth. Big Welcome Labrynth is probably one of the most powerful cards in the entire deck. because this card lets you special summon a Labrynth monster from your hand, deck, or your graveyard, then return a monster that you control back to the hand. You can also banish this card from your graveyard and then target a fiend monster you control, or if you control a level 8 or higher fiend monster, usually one of your copies of your ladies, you can actually target one card your opponent controls instead and return it back to the hand, which is great to be able to use this card to basically just bounce one of your opponent's cards off the field back to their hand. We then play 3 copies of Transaction Rollback. Transaction Rollback is insane in this deck, and it's definitely a 3 of in this build, because it has a crazy powerful graveyard ability. We're usually never using the on-field effect that you pay half your life points and then target a normal trap card in your opponent's graveyard except a copy of Transaction Rollback, and this card's effect becomes that card's activated effect. You're usually never using that ability. You're usually using one of your furniture cards like Shanda Draglier or your copy of your Stovey Torby to discard this card to the graveyard and then use its graveyard ability to banish this card from the graveyard, pay half your life points, target a normal trap in your graveyard, and then copy that card's ability, which is so cool to be able to do, especially using it with your big welcome Labrynth to extend your plays. I love that about this card, and it's such a powerful card to be able to play in this deck. We then play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Infinite Impermanence is really good to be able to play in this deck to basically just stop your opponent's monster effects and also lock down entire columns of spells and traps. It adds a lot of pressure in this build, and I really like this card as a 3 of in the deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, guys, we're going to start off with 3 copies of Chaos Angel. This card is extremely important to be able to play in the deck. You could probably get away with 2 copies of it, but it's still really important in the deck. You could even maybe get away with 1 copy of it, because I know this card is really expensive, but it's a really important card to be able to play in this deck. If you play Pot of Prosperity instead, you could probably play just a single copy, but if you have multiples, definitely play multiples, because you can use one of your ladies to be able to use it and a copy of Stovey Torby to step into this card, and if you use dark monsters to make this card, then monsters that you control cannot be destroyed by battle, which is so cool. Plus it spot removes cards off the field, and it is a level 10 fiend, which is so important. This card is definitely a 3 of in the build to be able to use if you're using Extravagance, because you will banish them sometimes in the deck, but you can't just use one if you want to use Prosperity. We then play a single copy of Psychic Impunisher. Psychic Impunisher comes up every so often in the deck. It's just basically another card you can make with a copy of a level 8 monster plus your copy of Ash Blossom. Sometimes your opponent won't see it coming, which is really cool to be able to just summon this card out to your side of the field, because you do pay half your life points with Transaction Rollback. So your life points are going to be lower than your opponent's a lot in this deck, especially if you use Transaction Rollback's ability. So this card is really big to be able to summon to your side of the field and just ends games. We then play a single copy of Baguska, which is a fiend monster that we can make with our copy of Green and Pink Maid, so this card just helps you slow down the game. We then play 2 copies of Typhon. Typhon is just really important in the build to be able to summon to your side of the field, because you can basically make it with just about any monster, which is really cool. Plus this card is a fiend monster, so if you do fiend lock yourself, you can still summon this card out to the field, which is really good to be able to do, and I love that about this card, that it's so easy to put on the field, and it's really insane because it is a bounce and basically walking skill drain for 3,000 or higher attack. We then play a single copy of Zeus. Zeus is just really good in the build to board wipe the field, just in case you need to. It doesn't come up all that often, but it's still a good option. We then play a single copy of Underworld Goddess. Underworld Goddess is just basically out towers like monsters, so it's just an option that you can make if you need it. We then play 3 copies of Mudracker. Mudracker is very important for the deck because it brings back fiend monsters from your graveyard, and it also has a really cool ability that if a monster that you control would be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can treat a fiend monster instead, which is really cool to be able to protect your cards, and it's just a really good 3 of. We then play a single copy of the Dark Charmer because it's a good option to be able to play in this deck, especially to bring back cards from the graveyard. 1 copy of SP Little Knight because it's just insane. This card is so good. If you have room for it in your extra deck, play it. If you don't, you could play a 3rd copy of Typhon if you don't have this card, but it's still really good to be able to play in the deck. We then finally play a single copy of Relinquished Anima. Relinquished Anima is just really good because it eats cards all at the field, which is really cool to be able to just basically eat your opponent's card off their side of the field. It is a spellcaster, so it doesn't come up all that often, and we do only play the Coup Clock as a target, but it's still really good to be able to make in this deck. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Labrynth before, you should definitely give this deck a try because it's really fun to be able to play, especially now that we have rollback, because there's so many cool like tech options that you can play in this build. And I really like the 4 awesome like single trap cards that I play in this build because they come up all the time. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.